In the old days, if you got into Harvard, your whole career was taken care of. Now, not necessarily.
Successful people in the future will be spiritual.
Things have gone pretty well for the Chinese economy. Fortune 500 companies in the US are very profitable. Wages have not increased since 1976.
A lot of people, they don't have that freedom. What's their choice? If it's an entrepreneur, they start in the US or in China. What would you recommend to your own kid?
I want her to be able to write gentisa, not fancisa.
他叫 Mitch 百利，犹太人，在北京生活30年，他把速八带入中国，并成功开了1200多家。在目前紧张的国际局势下，作为哈佛访问学者的他，又是如何看待留学生的去留呢？
As someone who have spent half of their life in the US, only to face brutal realities, the first one, 16% H1B acceptance rate, despite nearly 30% drop in the applications. The second one, 严重内卷. A flooded Chinese job market where 13 million graduates cannot find jobs. And the third one is the identity whiplash. Because they're not expats or locals. There's something in between. Where did they go from here?
Every system has a point and it has a vector. It's going somewhere. You got to first recognize where you are now is not necessarily where we'll be forever. If you're driving your car from place A to place B, you may have to drive through a couple places that you don't want to drive through. But to get to the place you're trying to get to, you may have to do that. Now, that's Trump's argument for the tariffs. We need to reshore manufacturing. It's not going to happen without putting these tariffs on, and then we'll see what happens. Whether you agree or disagree with that argument, the argument that sometimes things take time and that you can't always assess something is good or bad based on the moment you're in. That's a very reasonable statement. Like, for example, if you were just to come in and look at the situation of a property owner in Shanghai, you can say, oh, their property is worth 30% less, and isn't that a shame? And that's terrible. On the other hand, the market didn't crash. There's a good chance 明天会更好, right?
Yes.
And maybe you had to go through those painful reforms in order to get there. It's possible that what they're experiencing, this pain, that it's not forever. So I'd say for Gen Z folks, I know it's hard to do this, especially when you're just in your early 20s, but to have a little patience. Things have gone pretty well for the Chinese economy since I was there in the 80s. And really, this is the first time that the economy has had real struggles. And that was despite the fact that you had massive imbalances, way too much reliance on property development and land sales from local governments, way too much reliance on manufacturing and export-led manufacturing. You have a complicated economy now.
Yeah.
So I think things are going to get better. But the macro story is a lot more compelling right now than the micro story.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but it's kind of a mirror of the US as well. Like, Fortune 500 companies in the US are very profitable. Wall Street, Hollywood, tech sector is very profitable.
So both sides, there's like an opportunity.
But if you go down to the individual level, wages have not increased in the United States on an inflation-adjusted basis since 1976. That's a fact. While all other costs have risen at about 2.3% compound annual growth rate, wages are flat since 1973. And people say, well, that's a problem. Where do you think the huge debt comes from? Like, consumer debt in the US, it's more than $1 trillion. Where do you think like the huge mortgage debt, the student debt comes from? The fact that people are working in many cases 3 jobs, trying to make ends meet, and a lot of things that were sure for our parents were not so sure for us or for my kids. I'm a visiting fellow at Harvard. In the old days, if you got into Harvard, you pretty much, your whole career was taken care of. Now, not necessarily. Even they're having a hard time finding jobs.
College, they also need money. They're working in the legal field. The competition has been larger because there's only that much top law firms in New York. They used to just pick from the Columbia kids, but now there are too many of them. You're in one of the Harvard conference. He Youjun was also there. And somebody asked the question, should international students pick to stay in the US or go back to China for work? And he said something like,
yeah, go back.
Yes.
My suggestion is you should all go back to China. When it comes to business, when it comes to entrepreneurship, you want to graduate here with your certificate and build your 资源 here from scratch in this environment versus, I'm sure you know a bunch of uncles and aunties in China.
But what's coming up in the comments side, a lot of people, they don't have that 资源. Or their parents already passed the time of giving their 资源.
Right.
So if that's the case, what's their choice?
I remember that question, and he was a very, very nice guy, very smart. If you have fluency in both cultures, it's far more interesting to keep looking for ways to do something in the middle. There aren't many people that are able to work between the two halves of the G2. I would recommend to all of them, whether they're in the US or China, to have a hard skill. Something that you can take with you that's portable. Wherever you go, you can create value. Like if you know how to make tea, you know, wherever you go, somebody needs you to make tea. There'll always be someone willing to pay you to make tea, give you a place to sleep in the back. Have a skill. It's very important in this world we're in today that you have to have a hard skill like finance, accounting, law, investment banking, something that you can do for a large organization. Once you're able to get into a large organization, then you're able to like apprentice and learn a lot about how organizations work and how organizations are able to create value themselves. Once you've picked all that up, then you can go to a smaller organization. If you're really an entrepreneur, then just go be an entrepreneur. Trading or gig economy or whatever it is people do.
If it's an entrepreneur, should they start in the US or in China?
Oh gosh, that's a tough question. I think if you're an entrepreneur, that question's irrelevant. You have some idea about something that is so compelling that you can't stop thinking about it, and you just have to do it. If you don't have that feeling, then you shouldn't be an entrepreneur. That's like, because it's so much more difficult than other fields, right? Because you don't have ziyuan. Everything you do is tough. Yeah. If you work for a large organization, at least the funds are provided from the company. But if you're an entrepreneur, you have to find your own money. And not everybody can find money easily. And so that's not even being an entrepreneur, that's just raising money. And that's a whole different skill set. To be honest with you, both are really compelling entrepreneurial locations. And if you're an American trying to be an entrepreneur in China, that's very tough. I don't recommend it.
I think you mentioned only 7 people.
Yeah, there's only 7. I was just with one of them, the legendary Roberta Lipson, who founded Beijing United Healthcare. And she's like an incredible leader, incredible entrepreneur. And she actually hosted me and some of the other students at Beida for dinner one night early, my first year at Beida. I just saw her at the Harvard conference and it was really great to catch up with her. And there's almost none of us. It's like going into the gladiators arena. You're not supposed to survive, but if you do survive, then the crowd loves you. Because you did something that was very difficult. You figured out a way to beat the odds, which is basically entrepreneurship anyway, but it's just more intense in China. I think a lot of entrepreneurship happens in both places for good reason, because both markets are huge and both have tons of institutional capital, memory, experience, all the things you want. But I would do it in one or the other place.
What would you recommend to your own kid?
I do have a daughter, and she's 7 months old, and so we speak Chinese with her sometimes and English with her. We want her to be fluent in both languages. I want her to be able to write gentiza, not fanciza. I want her to be fluent in both cultures. I definitely would like to see her do her undergrad at Beida. I would be thrilled for that. Or I'd be thrilled if she went into school in the States too. It's in between these two countries. I don't really see it as chicken or fish. I just don't like that choice. Like I've always thought that the bridge was you can stand out here and you can see from both sides, and it creates objectivity. My ideas come from the combination of my US and China experience that have made me who I am. Someone that honestly can see both sides of it. I'm a patriotic American. I was just walking around today in New York. I was like, I really love the US. It's a great country. I'm so glad my ancestors came over from Eastern Europe in the early 1900s, and I'm glad we settled here in New York. I'm so proud of this whole thing. But whenever I'm in China, of course I'm very proud to be able to go anywhere and do anything. I see my hotels everywhere. Of course I'm proud about that. So the place to be is in the middle. And that's where you learn the most. And that's where you get out of this tribalism. We're coming into an age where we humans are going to evolve along with our technology. And I think we're coming into a new time when certain ideas that were very important to our past are going to be less important in the future. I think we're going to be merging with technology. I think we're going to be much more spiritual. You want an advice? I'll give you some advice. Successful people in the future will be spiritual people. In the past, it was kind of like a hobby. You meditate. In the future, in order for us to have the ability to compete against AI and to be able to use AI, because AI will be so much smarter than we are, the one thing that we'll have is if we have mindfulness. If we have mindfulness, if we have perception, if we have 意识感, 意识力, then I believe we can survive and thrive in the future. If we don't have that, we are going to be a poor version of AI and robotics, because we're never going to be able to be as hardworking as a robot. We're never going to be as able to know all the world information as easily as AI. But there are things that we will be able to do if we develop our spiritual dimensions.
Yes.
That is going to be the thing that makes your life successful in the future.
品智慧聊人生，我们下期茶友会见。